One of the unique things about Advance OU is that Generation 3 is the only one with Choice Band in the game, and yet no Choice Specs and Scarf. So in this video we're going over specs. Scarf will be a different video. So what there being a Choice Band and no specs means in practice for Gen 3 is that physical attackers have an immediate explosive level of power available to them that is not as easily slappable on special attackers. I mean, special attackers can certainly be instantly threatening, but they more so do it through super effective coverage. So you take something like Starmie or Jirachi, which both hit a lot of things super effectively, or you have Zapdos and Moltres, who both have enormous special attack stats and a big strong stab move that hits several significant Pokemon super effectively. And that vastly differs from the way Choice Banders operate, because with a band, then it doesn't necessarily matter if you're hitting the opponent for super effective damage in a lot of cases. Like, for example, if you've got a CB Tar against Snorlax, you don't have to hit it with Brick Break or Focus Punch. Your Rock Slide is already threatening to rip off over half its health just with a neutral attack. And that kind of thing is not so easily replicable on the special side. And on the physical side, then you have your blend of using this immediate power for either wall breaking or revenge killing, or, in some rare cases late game, or not so rare in the case of Aerodactyl, but in some cases late game sweeping. So, with wall breaking, you've got T-Tar, you've got Metagross, you've got Salamence, sometimes you've got Flygon and Heracross in there as well. Aerodactyl can take a wall breaking role, but it also tends to fall under the revenge killing category, alongside, of course, Dugtrio, famed for this. And then you've got Salamence and Flygon using that base 100 speed stat to fulfill a similar role against a lot of things, because base 100 is pretty speedy in advance. And then, of course, Aero is famously cleaner with the immediate power of its Rock Slide, Double Edge, Earthquake, Hidden Power, Bug, or Flying, or Fighting, but usually Bug these days. But yeah, it wants the instant power of Rock Slide to hit things neutrally, not because it's boosting super effective coverage even further. Its strongest move is Double Edge. It outpowers its stab. So if that's your strongest move, then yeah, you really appreciate having that band. So what we want to explore here is what would happen if there would be choice specs in advance. So my initial idea is that people like to say, "Oh, I'm glad specs isn't in advance because that would just be another threatening thing to take into account." And honestly, the more I think about it, the more I think I don't even know if specs would be very good in advance. And so here's what I mean. With a good choice bander, you need to have a really spammable attack. It also helps very much if you are sand immune. So you're not just getting worn down for existing in T-Tar world, especially because Protect is such a common move. So when you think about really spammable attacks from things like T-Tar, Metagross, you got your big hits like Rock Slide and Meteor Mash. And Salamence is not sand immune, of course, but it is Spikes immune and it's fast, so it helps make up for it that way. But there's also the matter of, with a choice band, you are more reliably able to break through physical walls. Like, Swampert can't take banded hits forever. Milotic famously struggles to take banded, it goes from being a great T-Tar answer to against a lot of sets to not being able to switch into banded Rock Slides, at all. So when physical walls like that, or like defensive Flygon doesn't like taking CB Focus Punch from T-Tar, things of that nature, then those physical walls are quite easily overwhelmed. And that's because physical attackers do not have their equivalent of Blissey. And special attackers are going to have to contend with Blissey, which That's pretty bad. So you've got a Blissey figure, which is bad, first of all. And you also don't have much in the way of spammable attacks. So, and before we get into that, let's look at what the special attacks that most define Advance are. Zapdos Thunderbolt, that's a big one, for sure. I'm not going to deny the power of special attackers, because I think special offense is way better than physical offense, for example. Zapdos Thunderbolt, T-Tar runs a bunch of mixed stuff commonly, or all-out special. You know, Hydro Pumps from Starmie, Suicune, Swampert, Dragon Claw, Salamence, Fire Blast from Moltres and Charizard, and then more Thunderbolts from like Jolteon, Magneton, and then Psychic from Jirachi and Celebi is also really, really key, right? So those are your special attacks. So the problem is not necessarily that the attacks aren't spammable. Nobody would doubt that having a Specs Hydro Pump or Surf would be useful. The problem is that, unlike those other choice banders, you are getting worn down really fast by sand for spamming it with something like a Suicune, which famously has longevity issues even with lefties, because it is affected by both sand and spikes. And these other Pokemon that would use the move are similarly affected. Then you've got Celebi and Jirachi spamming Psychic, famously not a very spammable attacking type, given the plethora of Psychics and Steels, and of course the Dark-type Tyranitar that run rampant throughout the tier. The more I think about it, the more I think Choice Specs is a utility option above all else. It helps Magneton really nicely, because it doesn't just guarantee that it KOs Skarmory, but it also lets it destroy Fortress with HP Fire, which is very nice. And with super powerful Thunderbolts, it more easily is able to pick off Metagross. That's absolutely huge. And it can even help it out against Jirachi. So Specs Magneton, I think, would be one of its premier sets. Pursuit Tyranitar variants, that would also be really great, having a 50% boost to your Pursuit, so you trap Gengar and, you know, even things like Claydol and Celebi. Even something like a band-locked Aerodactyl or Salamence are punished way harder by Specs T-Tar. And then, of course, you have, you know, other help on those sets, like Fire Blast threatens to destroy Skarmory, and HP Grass threatens Swampert and stuff like that. But, I mean, even a Specs Crunch would be pretty annoying for a lot of teams to switch into, especially once that 20% drop kicks in. But again, this is more to enhance the already good qualities of the trapping of Magneton and Pursuit Tar, whereas those special attackers that are good offensively don't really need the kick from Choice Specs. Because what's the most obvious thing you would want to do? Put Specs on Zapdos, right? You have that huge special attack stat, that Vicious Stab Thunderbolt. Yeah, and now you're taking Sand that you're not recovering, and Protect suddenly beats you, and Thunderbolt, as great as it is, suddenly, if that's your spammable move, suddenly Pokemon that should not be countering you at all, like Swampert, actually become good switch-ins. And yeah, the Thunderbolt power will be overwhelming for something like a Snorlax or a Magneton even to be able to switch into. You know, they get plowed. But on the other hand, you're now getting, or even like T-Tar, you would actually absolutely threaten, you know, enormously. Yeah, that would be nice. But I just don't know that it outweighs suddenly being checked by Swampert, and the fact, and of course getting worn down, so you can't threaten out Skarmory. Now Skarmory's like, oh sweet, that Zapdos switched in. Protect, free 6%, and I see what it locks itself into. And with or without Specs, it's not going to do anything to change your matchup against Blissey, realistically. So you're just putting yourself on a faster ticking timer for not much benefit. Like, I think that the teams that you would overwhelm with a Specs Zapdos, or let's say a Specs Suicune, because that could be interesting, most of those teams that you're going to overwhelm with the Specs boost, you're going to overwhelm them anyway. Like, if their switch-ins are so shaky to Thunderbolt that, you know, like, it's a T-Tar or something, which is famously, you know, can check Zapdos, kinda, not too well. But if that's the switch in anyway, you should be threatening them anyway. You know, if your opponent is going to crumple to Specs Hydro Pump from Suicune or Starmie, then they're going to just crumple to Hydro Pump in general, probably. And Suicune gets Calm Mind, And then you start getting played around in really silly ways. Like with Starmie, it's like, yeah, I have my Specs Hydro Pump, but now I can't Ice Beam that Salamence that suddenly gets a DD on me. So, and for late game cleaning, I mean, something obvious could be Alakazam, because it's got that enormous special attack stat, huge speed, and stab psychic. So you could clean through a bunch of weakened teams late game, right? But you look at how many like psychic resists are so common in the tier without even trying. You know, T-Tar, Metagross, Claydol, it's so Celebi. Then you're just throwing your Jirachis and Magnetons, and you're just stuffing Psychics without even trying. Yeah, it'd be cool, and you could trick Blissey with it, but I don't know. It would be cool to make Alakazam better. I'm not saying it would be worse for sure, but it's not enough to. I mean, it's not like Choice Band is an auto win button for sure, but a Choice Band is a lot easier to move with because the Pokemon using Band really appreciate the initial boost, but they also don't need it a lot of the time. But it is significant in a lot of scenarios, whereas the Pokemon, the special attackers in the tier, yeah, you definitely could find yourself appreciating it, but you got to be careful. I mean, I think Specs Charizard and Moltres would be cool for sure, just because of how vicious their Fire Blast already is. And if you picture scenarios where like you get one attack off before you're forced to switch in anyway, yeah, may as well make it Specs. But then the Sand and Protect issue kicks in. And that's really not a... I mean, Protect is already irritating for Choice Banders, but they at least aren't dealing with Sand most of the time. And Salamence has its, is the exception because of its own solid traits. And Heracross is not used because Banned Heracross I think is cool, but it's not used nearly as much as the others for exactly this reason. And, I mean, what else are you going to put Specs on? Gengar? Forget it. It doesn't even use its stab moves. And it loves switching its moves. That's the thing. Physical attackers love getting in and immediately throwing out huge hits, where special attackers really like mixing, being able to hit multiple things without, locking into one move. So you would find use for it. I mean, I'm sure people would do funny stuff with Specs Metagross, because you get a Pursuit boost on Gengar, and you actually hit Waters pretty hard with Stab Psychic, boosted by Specs. Yeah, I'm sure that would be fun, but I don't think that it would be overwhelming at all. And, I mean, Specs Salamence, that'd be cool, because Dragon Claw is only has Steel's resisting it. But again, I mean, the Sand factor is just so big. And if you're going to use a Choice Salamence, I think you're going to use Band because it plows through Calm Minders really nicely. Whereas the benefit of going full-out Specs, I just don't know if it's there. I mean, I'm sure there would be some use for it, definitely. Because Dragon Claw, Fire Blast, Hydro Pump, those are some great moves to... But, I don't know. I'm a big fan of Band Salamence, and the pressure it offers is really unique in the tier, but... Yeah, so that's pretty much everything I wanted to say on what. Yeah, I don't think you would see it on Celebi much at all. Magneton and Pursuit Tar for sure, because you're giving up very little and you're gaining a lot. I mean, yes, okay, T-Tar might be a little problematic to lock into Pursuit or Crunch in certain games, sure, but it doesn't stop CB-Tar from being a great trapper in other generations. So, and the power boost is significant. They are not losing much by locking into one move at a time, and the rewards they gain are improved trap targets they're already trying to take out. They only need that one move for that trap target. Yes, Crunch versus Pursuit on T-Tar, but in general, that will generally work for them. So that's absolutely huge. They're giving up very little and gaining a ton. They're now able to fulfill their niche better. Whereas the spammable special attackers, it's a combination of either their moves aren't spammable in the case of the psychics like Celebi, Jirachi, even Alakazam, or and I mean I hate to call Thunderbolt not a spammable move, but it just the way that it turns. Because Zapdos is famous because it's an electric that's not answered by grounds, because it's not just immune to ground itself, but because they're also terrified of its hidden powers. And suddenly, when you specs T-Bolt with it, then you are giving those waters, or not waters, those grounds free reign while making yourself worse against Skarmory. And most of all, you don't do anything to change your matchup against the biggest wall in the tier, Blissey. Whereas with physical attackers, then yeah, there is a major difference. Because, like, let's say you try to break down a Swampert with, like, a DD Tar, DD Mence combination, that's not going to happen. But if one of them is choice banned, then suddenly Swampert's getting hit really hard, really fast, and you're going to be able to overwhelm it very quickly. So, and with Specs Pokemon, it's just not the same, especially because the Specs Pokemon are so much more vulnerable to sand. Like, all of them. The only one that isn't is Jirachi, and that one's Specs move is Psychic. And, which, you know, very, very not spammable. And it's not strong enough to spam other moves either. I mean, Specs Fire Punch, that's not going to do much. And there's also Specs Swampert. I'm sure that would be cool. I mean, really stinging a Skarmory, it would be cool, but it's not going to be Swampert's main set. You know, not at all, because you're going to lose the leftovers that help it be such an important part of the metagame defensively. So yeah, Specs Swampert definitely has some cool stuff it can do, but there is going to be a significant price to pay for slapping Specs on it. As satisfying as it'll be to really smack that Skarm. So, that's pretty much my takeaway. I mean, look, Specs Overheat with Moltres, that'll be insanely satisfying. For sure. Just ripping holes even in Resist the way it did. Or the way it already does without the Specs. I mean, that'll be a thing of beauty. Especially, you know, if you want to use Specs, I think you got to use some weather clearing with it. So you could use, like, a sunny day on another Pokemon and then let your Specs Moltres loose. Not even just for the sun boost, necessarily. Obviously, that helps a lot. But just to clear the sand and, you know, make it so that you're not revealing yourself as soon as you switch in, first of all, for not having the item. And not getting worn down and not getting, you know, punished with 6% and getting your move scouted by Protect, and instead just getting your move scouted by Protect. Because a lot of the time with choice banners, it's like, yeah, okay, you protected against my move, you know what I'm going to do, but I'm still going to hit you hard, and I'm not getting worn down while it's happening. So, yeah. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to say. Let me know if I overlooked anything or what your thoughts are. And, I guess it makes Houndoom better as well, because it's even stronger than T-Tar in terms of Pursuit. Not a great Pokemon, but it's got a stronger Crunch and Pursuit, and it also has the benefit of being faster and having Stab, Fire Blast. So, yeah, Specs Houndoom, that'd be pretty cool. I think you could do some cool stuff with Specs Jinx, for sure. You know, you Lovely Kiss, you switch out, and then you spam Specs Ice Beams. I think that would actually be very fun. So, but yeah, I don't think it's going to be game-breaking, so. Specs Regice already has longevity problems, but just the idea of Specs Ice Beam is nice in general. Yeah, I think that's more or less it. Alright, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. And I will... of course this would make Advanced Ubers nightmarish, because, you know, welcome to Specs Kyogre. But, you know, DPP survived, so I'm sure it'll be fine. Anyway, once again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts. And other than that, I will see you tomorrow.